Testing, testing. Kia ora koutou, nau mai, haere mai. Please be seated, everyone. Welcome one and all to the 2022 Wall of Fame induction. This is a special occasion when the school and Old Boys join to honour selected Old Boys who have distinguished themselves in their chosen fields, who have been exceptional in their personal and professional lives in the arts, humanities, business, academia or sport. This is the 13th year that the school has recognised Old Boys in this manner, and those chosen for the wall embody the long-term King's calling to achieve a life of success, service and self-realisation, to become effective good men. Today we honour 5 men. So it's my privilege to welcome from the executive of the Kingsmen, which is the Old Boys Association, Doug Jackson and Max Stevens, Chris George, President of the Kingsmen, and Hugh Kidd, former exec member and King stalwart in the front row. Here to in person or via other means are 2022 Wall of Fame inductees Ross Black, Ken Graham, Brendan McCullum, Peter Montgomery and Anthony Simpson. And we're also privileged to have Judge Joe Anderson in our audience today, who was added to the wall in 2021. Welcome. And also a huge welcome to all family and friends present in support of this event and those of you joining us via streaming. Let's put our hands together, everyone, please, to welcome our guests to the Assembly. Now, the way it works is that today I will read key aspects of the achievement of each of these men, and a fuller citation will also be added to the King's Honours book over in the main foyer. Each Old Boy will be presented a commemorative certificate with framing made from the original school's timber. He will also be added to the esteemed wall in the foyer and receive a cap from the Old Boys Association as presented by Mr. George. Each inductee will speak briefly, and if not here in person, a clip or message he prepared for the occasion will be offered. Ken Graham, Brendan McCullum and Anthony Simpson will be communicating to us today in this way. To our first inductee, Ross Black, Kings 1961 to 65. Ross enjoyed his 5 years at Kings and was appointed as a prefect during his final year, before leaving school to pursue a business career. 4 years later, while maintaining his full-time employment, he enrolled at the University of Otago to study commerce part-time. He graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing in 1975. His business career may conveniently be described as one of two halves. He spent the first 25 years initially gaining sales and manufacturing experience. In 1977, Ross co-founded Sunshine Leisure Products, which manufactured and marketed camping and outdoor leisure products across New Zealand and Australia. As Sunshine expanded, it acquired the businesses of the Great Outdoors Company, Hallmark and Ferrydown. Sunshine was subsequently sold to Dunedin public company Donaghy's Limited in 1990. During the second 24 years, Ross pursued a career as a professional company director, serving as chairman of Faro Engineering for 26 years, a director of Port Otago for 21 years, a director of the Canterbury District Health Board for 5 years, chairman of the Otago District Health Board for 3.5 years, chairman of Timberlands West Coast for 7 years, and the first non-farmer director of the Southland Dairy Cooperative for 6 years, and as a director of a number of other companies. In 1998, Ross founded the Otago Rescue Helicopter Trust to provide dedicated intensive care rescue helicopter services across the lower half of the South Island and served as founding chairman for 22 years. He spearheaded a $3.8 million funding drive to provide the emergency medical equipment in the helicopter, build the helipad on Dunedin Hospital and establish the service. During his chairmanship, the Otago Rescue Helicopter transported more than 9,500 patients involved in workplace, sporting and vehicle accidents, sea or land rescues and transfers between hospitals. He was instrumental in obtaining a significant amount of donated professional services, which support the day-to-day operations of the service, as well as innovating equipment upgrades, such as night vision goggles, advanced navigation and GPS routes that enabled safer missions in inclement conditions. The Otago Rescue Helicopter Service now operates a fleet of 4 dedicated machines. Ross says that this has been a privilege for him to have been involved with such a service, and particularly with such an incredibly dedicated group of pilots and paramedics who provide a 24/7 service at all times of the year. He was also trustee and chairman of the Healthcare Otago Charitable Trust from 1999 to 2014, overseeing an investment policy that built the trust's funds to more than $17 million, while gifting $10 million for equipment, training, research and community projects. Ross was awarded an Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to health in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for 2021. Ross claims that the honour is not merely in recognition of his own efforts, but is also for the efforts of other long-serving trustees and ultimately for the Trust itself. In recognition of his services to the business community, Ross was elected a Fellow of the New Zealand Institute of Directors and Fellow of the New Zealand Institute of Management. He's now retired and living in Wanaka. Ross, please come up to speak to our school. Congratulations. Let's put our hands together, please.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies and guys. The last time I was at this school, I was sitting in amongst the team, so that was quite a long time ago. I've had an interesting and rewarding career in an amazing variety of different organisations and companies. But clearly, the most rewarding, personally, has been the involvement with the Rescue Helicopter Trust. I was the founding chairman 23 years ago when we first got established, and I served as the chairman for 22 years. After all this time, I still get a lump of pride in my throat when I'm out at the rescue base in either Mosgiel or at Queenstown Airport, and a 111 emergency activation call comes in. To watch a group of 5 grown men and women running in an orderly manner to help get the pilot and the 2 paramedics into the machine and all the equipment secured for the machine to lift off consistently in less than 3.5 to 5 minutes. And we hit the 3.5 minutes more often than we hit the 5. That's a very important target. Otago has consistently outperformed all other rescue helicopters in New Zealand in achieving that very fast activation, which means that we're on our way to the emergency at the earliest possible opportunity. I could intrigue you for an hour with stories of the Rescue Helicopter Trust, but Mr MacGyver has fortunately limited me to 3 or 4 minutes. And he's also asked that during that time I share some tips from my experience that may be of interest to young guys about to head out into the world of business. I want to talk about just 2 things: applying for your first job, and secondly, I want to share my philosophy with you, making the most of every opportunity. Uppermost, if we talk about first jobs first, uppermost in most young guys' minds is what career path they want to follow or what they want to do when they leave school. And secondly, how do I get my first job? Like a lot of young people, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was at school. I did have a notion that I wanted to go into business. I didn't think at that stage that I needed university. You've heard from Mr MacGyver that I subsequently realised that a university education would help, and so I enrolled and did my degree part-time whilst continuing in my work. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at King's, but to the considerable disappointment of my teachers, I was not a standout student, either academically or on the sporting field. I did successfully manage a dance band during my sixth form year, but that didn't contribute to my grades. So when I was applying for my first job, I had a challenge. You can't exactly show a prospective employer school reports that consistently say you could do better. I had to sell myself, and this is the start of my message to you. I had to sell myself as a good prospective employee. I remember at the conclusion of my first interview with the senior manager at National Mortgage, the senior manager asked me where I hoped to end up if I came to work for National Mortgage. Without knowing anything of his background, I told the ex-All Blacks captain that I hoped one day to have his job. He was amused and said, "Well, young Black, we'll give you an opportunity to prove yourself, but you start as an office junior." When applying for your first job, what you actually have to do is to sell yourself. I'm sure you'll get this talked through with you in vocational training, and if you don't, Mr MacGyver will hopefully be making some notes. But you actually have to sell yourself. You have to sell yourself as an attractive prospect, and as an attractive employee, one who stands out from the others. And it's that standing out from the others that really matters. You don't get a lot of that in textbooks, but when you apply for a job, there will almost certainly be a significant number of other applicants on the pile. You've got to find a way to stand out. Most employers are looking for applicants with demonstrated ability, well motivated, they're pleasant and they're well spoken, they look enthusiastic, and they smile. There's an enormous difference between someone who applies for a job looking down and muttering and someone who looks up and smiles and engages the interviewer. Basically, you're there to convince them that you're keen to do the job and that if they give you a chance, you'll do a good job. And if you remember just those principles and that aspect about looking up and smiling, it's hard to do. Practice at home, practice with your mates, practice with mum and dad. But you've got to learn to talk to a prospective interviewer and look up and engage them and smile. You've got to show them what you're made of. And then, is that my time? I'm going to go over. My second point, which really has been my philosophy throughout my entire career, is making the most of every opportunity. That first office job that I got as office junior was fairly humbling and not an awful lot of fun. So I did it as cheerily as I could, as friendly around the place and as helpfully as I could, and I quite quickly got promoted. And I could take that story through the rest of my 50 years of working. And I applied exactly that philosophy. I made the most of every single opportunity that presented, and it seemed to pay dividends. People like working with people who are making the most of it, and people who are prepared to make a mistake. And that's how you learn. Put your hand up. I'm sorry, I've got that wrong, but we'll now try doing it a different way. When we start out looking for a job, we're not actually wanting to go to work because we want to be at work. We'd far rather be doing cooler things at home. We actually go to work to get a job, to earn some money, to support our lifestyle. So why not, given that you're going to work because you actually have to in the first instance, why not give it everything? Be an outstanding employee and earn as much money as you possibly can. In the process, you'll be able to enhance your non-working life and beginning to build a saving fund for buying a house. So, gentlemen, that's been my philosophy in life, you know, giving every opportunity the very best that I can. And if I can just leave you with those two thoughts. When you're applying for a job, remember you're selling yourself. Try and be personable. Try and smile. Try and look up and engage the person who's interviewing you. You've got to convince them that you're a good prospect. And secondly, once you get a job, regardless of what that job is, give it your best. It'll pay dividends for you. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris George, the President of the Kingsmen. I'm keeping this very brief. My job is to hand out the goodies for our Wall of Famers. I acknowledge that we have Wall of Famers beaming in from afar, Brendan McCullum, Anthony Simpson and Ken Graham. So hello from a sunny Dunedin, the first time we've seen the sun in about a fortnight. So it's my pleasure to present to Ross Black his commemorative cap and his old retro King's scarf. Thank you.
We now move to our second old boy to be added to the Wall of Fame. That's Ken Graham, Kings 1950 to 1955. Unfortunately, Ken let us know yesterday that he was unable to join us as intended. He has, however, provided a message that I'll read to you following his citation. Ken grew up on an 80-acre North Taieri farm where his father produced potatoes, grain crops and sheep and cattle livestock. He attended the nearby two-school Wiley's Crossing Primary School, which had a roll of some 50 pupils at the time. He was a member of a class of 5 with a wonderful teacher who had high aspirations for them all. In 1950, he was duly enrolled in Form 3L at King's High School, which was the top academic class. Getting to King's required Ken to leave home by 7:50 a.m, cycle the 5Ks to Mosgiel Railway Station, catch the commuter train to Dunedin and walk nearly the length of Surrey Street from the Caversham Railway Station and across Tonga Park to get to school. During the following decade, Ken, his younger brother Fred and 2 first cousins each attended King's. During this time, his eldest sister married a former King's pupil, and through their Finney children and Finney and Howie grandchildren, the Graham family has maintained a more than 50-year association with King's High School. While at King's, Ken was a cornetist in the school's brass band each year. In 1954, he won the cup for the best sergeant in the school's A Company Cadet Corps. In 1955, he was appointed head prefect and RSM, Regimental Sergeant Major of the school's Cadet Corps. Ken moved on to the University of Otago, where he studied for his Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery, graduating in 1962. From then until 1967, he served as a registrar in both Nelson and Dunedin, before heading north to become a cardiothoracic registrar at Green Lane Hospital in Auckland, where being left-handed in surgeries designed to cater for the great majority of right-handed surgeons caused him a few difficulties. In 1970, Ken was awarded an American Public Health Fellowship, and he and his young family moved to Portland, Oregon, for Ken to work under the well-known surgeon Albert Starr for 18 months. He returned to Green Lane in 1972 as a consultant cardiac surgeon. Ken rose steadily in responsibility through the years, and in December 1987 led the surgical team which performed the first New Zealand heart transplant. Typically modest in his achievements, he claimed privately that technically replacing an unhealthy heart with a healthy transplant was no bigger deal than replacing a car engine. It was surgery within an unhealthy heart which was much more problematic in his view. Ken retired as a heart surgeon in 2005, and he returned to his family's farming roots when he and his wife Patricia purchased a 100-acre property on the Bombay Hills on which to run cattle and sheep. On about 5 acres of sun-facing slopes, they planted grapes of Italian varieties, which they marketed under the Hitchin Road label. Ken also resumed his cycling, and after the pruning of their boutique vineyard had been completed and arrangements made to feed cattle, they headed to Europe, where they toured extensively by cycling, notably an epic ride from London to Rome. They also cycled in the UK, France, and the Iberian Peninsula. The relentless spread of Auckland to rural areas has meant they sold their property to a developer and retired to a rural area above Pokeno, although they still own a small property some 15 kilometres distant on which they run cattle. And I'll read to you the message that Ken provided yesterday for you to receive. I very much regret that I cannot be with you in the old school today. I've been blessed by having great teachers at both primary and secondary school. In surgery and cardiac surgery in particular, I've benefited from being part of a fine team. Team members help to keep one up to date and up to scratch. They can criticise and occasionally praise. Heart and lung transplant is an extreme example of the need for teamwork and coordination. I've come to recognise that one of the best features a person can have is to be a good team player. Let's put our hands together for Ken Graham. Next to join our esteemed group on the wall is Brendan McCullum, Kings 1995 to 1999. Brendan played first 11 cricket and first 15 rugby. He was awarded the Salter Trophy in 1999 as our top sportsman. In 1999, he was also joint head prefect, showing the extent of his leadership qualities. Brendan attended Kings, as did his brother Nathan and father Stu, having come from St Clair Primary School and McAndrew Intermediate. And he grew up on Waterloo Street. The McCullum and Rutherford families form an incredibly strong part of the cricketing tradition at Kings and have made massive contributions to Kings, Otago and New Zealand cricket. That tradition reinforced the foundations laid by other cricketing Kingsmen such as Warren Lees, Warren Shirley and Ross Murray. Stu McCullum played first-class cricket for Otago, and Nathan McCullum played with distinction for both Otago and New Zealand. Brendan's sporting abilities were evident from a young age. He represented the first 11 cricket team from 96 to 99 under the tutelage of John Cushion, Deputy Rector at the time and father of current staff member Simon Cushion. Furthermore, as a gifted rugby player, Brendan had the distinction of relegating future All Black Dan Carter to the reserves bench when selected in the South Island Secondary School rugby team in 2000 ahead of Dan Carter. There is simply not room to give a fitting summary of his career here, but it is no exaggeration to say that Brendan went on to become one of New Zealand's finest cricketers. First as a keeper batsman, then as a batsman in his own right in all formats of the game. Brendan's career was not without controversy. Brendan stood up for the values of cricket in a match-fixing allegation involving international players between 2011 to 2013. Brendan faced these challenges with a straight bat and soon silenced his critics with his deeds on the field and off the field. He was promoted to the Black Caps captaincy by coach Mike Hesson in 2012 as he took over from Ross Taylor. The New Zealand cricket team enjoyed considerable success under the McCullum-Hesson era, and it laid the foundation for the recent successes under Kane Williamson and Gary Steed. Brendan's most notable cricketing achievements for New Zealand include becoming the first New Zealander to score a triple hundred in a test, scoring 302 runs against India on the 18th of February 2014. In 2014, he became the first New Zealander to score 1,000 test runs in a calendar year, totalling 1,164. The record was bettered by Kane Williamson with 1,172 in 2015. Brendan was awarded the Sir Richard Hadley Medal for his performances in the 2014-15 season. He was awarded an Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to cricket in the 2015 Queen's Birthday Honours List. He won the New Zealand Sportsman of the Year Award in 2014 and then the Sport New Zealand Leadership Award in 2016. In his last Test outing on the 20th of February 2016, McCullum posted the fastest ever Test century in 54 balls, beating the 56-ball record previously held by Vivian Richards of the West Indies, scoring a total of 145 runs of 79 balls. In June 2016, just a few months after his retirement from international cricket, Brendan was honoured with an invitation to deliver the prestigious MCC Spirit of Cricket Cowdrey Lecture. He became only the second New Zealand player ever to be invited to deliver the Cowdrey Lecture, the other one being the late Martin Crowe. Brendan went on to become a much sought-after commentator and has made a rapid rise with his coaching. His recent promotion to the England head coaching role in May of this year has yielded instant results to the detriment of New Zealand, and a change of approach by the England team that would have many cricketing traditionalists surprised. Throughout his cricketing success, Brendan has never lost sight of his roots, his origins, and continues to sponsor the King's Year 9 Cricket Sporting Scholarship. When, on scoring his triple century in 2014, he was asked by a commentator for some illuminating thoughts and innermost feelings about the feat, he simply answered, "No mate, I'm a bogan from South D." When back in New Zealand, Brendan resides in Matamata in the North Island, where he can more easily pursue his horse racing interests. Now at this point, I'd like to play to you a message prepared for us by Brendan McCullum.
G'day guys, it's Brendan McCullum here. Incredibly humbled to be a recipient on the King's High School Wall of Fame and join a couple of other former King's boys. Looking back on my time at King's High School, I was very fortunate that I was able to be a participant in not just the first 15 but also the first 11 and also the first 11 soccer as well. I was co-head boy with my best mate Tyson Stenchies back in the day as well. And just had an incredible time throughout my time at King's, and got a lot of lifelong friends. And I guess that's one of the things about high school is, you know, you build relationships which last for a long period of time, and you go off on your respective journeys around the world, and your lives carry on, but those relationships really maintain. So I encourage all of you guys to really foster those throughout your time that you have at King's High School. Since I've left King's, my life has been wonderful. Actually, I had the opportunity to represent New Zealand at cricket, chase my dreams, and thankfully I was able to realise them, and then I went on to captain New Zealand as well at cricket. And then since I've retired after roughly a sort of 14-year career, I've been able to now move into some media stuff. I was doing some cricket commentary and some TV work and a little bit of radio stuff, and now of late have taken up the England Test coaching job, which is a great challenge as well. And it's been a really cool period since I left King's High School as well, but I look back on the time that I had as a King's pupil and look back so fondly on those times and the relationships that I was able to build and what King's offered me as a student. And I know we talk about building men for life, and I genuinely believe that King's played such a pivotal role in my life, and I look back on those times with a huge amount of satisfaction. So just incredibly humbled to be inducted or a recipient of the Wall of Fame, and I'm sure for me it's going to be something that I'm really proud of. My family will be really proud of as well. My brother went to King's. We're South Dunedin boys through and through, and whilst we don't live there anymore, it's still a huge part of our lives, and they always say never forget where you come from, and for us South Dunedin and King's High School is very much part of that. So hope you're all well, look forward to catching up with everyone in time, and again just truly humbled to be a recipient of this award.
Now to our fourth inductee, and this is Peter Montgomery. Kings 1956 to 1960. Peter attended College Street Primary School, Caversham Primary School and McAndrew Intermediate before attending King's High School. When his parents moved to Balnels, Peter was faced with the dilemma of which high school to attend, King's or Otago Boys. He was adamant that he wanted to go to King's, and so he did. Peter's feat in establishing a record for the 200 metres, a blistering time of 23.26 seconds in 1960, is part of King's athletics folklore. Of note, fellow Wall of Famer Eric Olsen ran second in the race. The record stood until 2015, when it was finally broken by Rory McNeil. And when that happened, Peter promptly rang Rory to congratulate him on breaking the record. Peter has remained a proud Kingsman ever since, and although a long-time resident in Auckland, Dunedin is never far from his mind. On leaving school, Peter embarked on his career in sports broadcasting through the influence of fellow Kingsman Bill McCarthy, who was already established in the profession. Peter was sideline comments man and Bill the main match commentator for the first live rugby test match, the New Zealand versus Australia game in 1972. There was a void in yachting commentary at the time, and Peter stepped into that while maintaining his involvement with other sports. Although best known for his television yachting commentary, he is respected amongst his fellow journalists as a true professional covering sports as diverse as rugby, rowing and swimming on both television and radio. His career has taken him to all parts of the globe, covering 2 Commonwealth Games, 13 America's Cup racing, 13 Whitbread Volvo around the world racing competitions, and no fewer than 10 Olympic Games. His career took off in the mid-1980s when New Zealand became competitive and then dominant in the America's Cup. Rightfully crowned as the voice of the America's Cup, his commentary allowed everyday New Zealanders to understand the America's Cup, the people involved, the tactics employed, and the crew functions. His commentating expertise and the technological improvements in presenting the racing on television has elevated America's Cup racing to the top of Kiwi sporting interests. Peter's commentary in the ensuing 40 years of America's Cup racing has become part of the fabric of New Zealand, and no doubt the international yacht racing world. His The America's Cup is now New Zealand's Cup, is immortal. Every Kiwi of a certain generation knows exactly what he was talking about and its context. Peter's been heavily involved in a number of charitable organisations over the years, including the Prostate Cancer Foundation and the Blind Sailing New Zealand organisation. Peter's contribution has been recognised with numerous broadcasting awards, after being awarded an MBE, Member of the British Empire, in the Queen's Birthday Honours List of 1995, and his admission to the America's Cup Wall of Fame in 2021. Peter is admitted to the King's High School Wall of Fame in recognition of his contribution to sport, and proudly so. And at this point I now ask him forward to share a few reflections with you all. Peter.
Greetings. Thank you, Rector Nick. When I look at the names on the Wall of Fame, there are some high achievers and frankly some overachievers who have been acknowledged and recognised in past years. It's an honour to join them. And it sparked a trip down memory lane back to reflect and remember a very long time ago, 1956 to 60. And the significance and influence of my years here at King's. We'll never know, but I wonder what my rector Bill Lang and key teachers I had during that time would think PJ Montgomery on the Wall of Fame. We had a history teacher, Ray Familton, who once told us he had never had a class of Philadelphia lawyers like us. We were encouraged to talk and challenge, and we did. I rather wonder whether our teacher Ray Familton and other teachers regretted that. Teachers like Ann Page and John Huggett encouraged us to challenge what we were being told, expand our vocabulary, communicate clearly, and that is something I've thought about a lot in the years since that I learnt here at King's. I've been privileged to have a career in sports broadcasting, and a bit like Ernest Hemingway at the bullfight in his famous book, Death in the Afternoon, I've been as close to the action as the matador, but have often seen it from a different perspective. Bill McCarthy, another Kingsman right through my time here, 1956 to 60, opened the broadcasting door for me. On the very first day I went broadcasting, McCarthy told me, "Remember, you're talking to a little old lady with a blue rinse hairdo in Riverton." And I've never ever forgotten that advice. 50 years later, the little old lady in Riverton has still been my number one listener. On the thread, if she can understand me, everyone else, including the know-alls on the Auckland waterfront, can as well. My start in broadcasting was a happy accident with several stars aligning. With no predecessor, I had to work on presentation and style, and I'd been fascinated and impressed by commentators in a variety of sports, especially the colourful Australian horse racing commentators. In the final 250 metres or 2 furlongs, how could they say so much in so little time? The ability of a good broadcaster to pull words out of the air to match their vocabulary with the occasion that was out in front of them was and still is very impressive. Right from the start, it was important to remain faithful to the expressions and language sailors use, but keeping in mind the little old lady in Riverton to ensure she knew what I was talking about, especially when sailing terms took on a whole new meaning for our listeners. There were also lessons from cricket and golf. I suppose a few of you here today will understand what is silly man on, what is covers, third man and slips, and even golf has its own language and jargon, considering the meaning of a chip out of a bunker for a birdie. So my reference to Hemingway was referring to the rare privilege of sailing in ocean racing classics in the Sydney Hobart and the Fastnet on yachts skippered by Peter Blake, Saramco New Zealand, Lion New Zealand, and Steinlager too, and with Grant Dalton on New Zealand Endeavour. An embedded broadcaster, if you like. To see crack sailors under pressure was very special. Not only under pressure because of the competition they were trying to beat, but also under pressure from the elements that have been unrelenting. But I've been fortunate to broadcast so much more than the primetime sailing events. There I was, as been mentioned, for the first rugby test live on TV back in 1972, and I was the sideline, and followed that with many more on TV. And then later, for over 20, 25 years, I was in the radio rugby team in Eden Park and other venues. And the things I could tell you that I heard from the touchline would turn your hair blue. But it was also the way they communicated and the way the All Blacks under pressure communicated. Most notably, one team I remember a lot when you had Sean Fitzpatrick and Zinzan Brooke. They were great referees that the referee on the ground didn't know he had. But also there were others, notably Grant Fox, who never stopped talking. He was always communicating about tactics, and Joe Stanley at centre. But the guy who had the most was Michael Jones, the brilliant number 7 and loose forward. Whenever Michael Jones spoke, the earth moved, and everyone listened. And so that was a key factor. I wonder, has that been missing a bit lately in the All Blacks of late? But I've also commentated at rowing and world championships and the Olympics and a lot more in swimming and other sports. When I mentioned the trip down memory lane back to reflect and remember, I not only remember the life-lasting influence of our teachers here at King's, but also fellow pupils. Many of you sitting there today will not realise that someone 3 or 4 along from you will have an influence that you'll twig on later. Sadly, many good Kingsmen who I was in the same year and class are no longer with us. Harry Price, who was a Mosgiel train boy, and boy, that was something, always attracting the rector's attention every other week, became the first New Zealander to become a CEO and later chairman of Westpac, and later prompted a key role in Australia for Westpac. Malcolm Arnold was captain of our first 15 in 1960 and had an acclaimed career in freight forwarding after accounting. There are so many Kingsmen in all walks of life who have done very well, and they were not necessarily in the top class. Like I notice on the Wall of Fame, there is Michael McIntyre, who was our Ducks in 1958. He was in another stratosphere, and I wonder if any other Kings boys ever gotten to the level he had. But he was so good, he dragged on so many other people who were bright and intelligent because of what he was able to offer. You don't really notice it at the time, but as an adult, the significance of going to Kings and all I learned in and out of the classroom has driven so many of my decisions later on in life. Going to school at Kings offers you so much, and it may be for the younger faces here, you may not quite get it, but it may be another 30 or 40 years before you really twig some of the things that you learned here at Kings. And I'm implying perhaps I might be a slow learner, but so many things crop up later that you learn here. And in those final years here at Kings, the future for all of you is what you want to make it. So enjoy all that you've achieved and how you have, and here's to you living life. And when you leave school, reflect on what you've learned here, and it might be 20 or 30 years that something you've learned actually you can enact. And thanks to the rector and the staff and old boys, here's to Kings. Thank you.
The America's Cup is now New Zealand's Cup.
Our final addition to the wall for 2022 is Anthony Simpson, Kings 1988 to 1992. Anthony had a distinguished career at Kings High School and was particularly strong in the academic, debating and performing arts areas. He won the coveted Bremner Scholarship for Academic Excellence and was awarded a Blue for Drama, having had the lead roles in Oliver and the Pirates of Penzance. In his final year at school, Anthony was a school prefect, School Ducks, winner of the English, History, Classical Studies and Art History prizes, the school representative in the Mini United Nations Assembly, the school council secretary and a member of the Workday Committee, the Formal Committee and the Common Room Committee. On leaving Kings, Anthony spent from 1993 to 1998 studying at the University of Otago. He graduated in 1999 with a Bachelor of Arts with double honours degrees in English and Political Studies. He continued to study from 2008 to 2009 when he completed an Executive Masters of Public Administration degree with the School of Government at Victoria University. He joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in 2000 and has remained there since in a variety of roles in the areas of trade and economic policy, international security, regional integration and multilateral diplomacy. These include Policy Officer in the United Nations and Commonwealth Division, Second Secretary in Trade at New Zealand Embassy in Tokyo, including 2 years Japanese language training, Senior Policy Officer, Economic Division, covering APEC issues, First Secretary, New Zealand Permanent Mission to the United Nations in New York, with a particular focus on New Zealand's campaign for a seat on the UN Security Council. From 2015, he spent 2 years leading the New Zealand capital-based teams coordinating New Zealand's policies and positions during its term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. He then spent 2 years as the Deputy Head of the Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, responsible for New Zealand's relations with Europe, contributing to New Zealand's response to Brexit and its lobbying for a free trade agreement with the European Union. In May 2019, he was appointed as New Zealand's ambassador to the Italian Republic, which also includes service as the non-resident ambassador to Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Cyprus, Greece, Montenegro, North Macedonia, San Marino, and Serbia. He is also the permanent representative to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization and World Food Programme and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Anthony's service to New Zealanders and the strengthening of New Zealand's place in the world has been truly impressive. Anthony's now provided a clip for you from Europe, which we will now screen.
Hi there, Kingsman. My name's Anthony Simpson, and I'm coming to you from Rome, where I'm currently serving as New Zealand's ambassador. It's currently a balmy 38 degrees here, but I'd gladly swap that for a couple of days of Dunedin winter if it meant I could have been there in person with you to collect this award. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be. So I wanted to send you this video to give you a quick outline of what it is that I've done since leaving King's that has, in any small way, contributed to me receiving this award. So I was at King's between 1988 and 1992, and after leaving school I went to Otago University where I completed a double honours in arts, majoring in English literature and political studies. I guess some would say I'm quite lucky to have any career after that, but I did toss up at that point about whether I should stick with the academic course or move into diplomacy. And fortunately, another King's High School Wall of Famer, who was currently at that point working for the Foreign Service, convinced me that a diplomatic career was worth trying. And I did that, and I've never looked back. I feel incredibly privileged to have had a career with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. It's given me 2 new languages, the chance to live and travel to a range of really interesting countries, work on a diverse range of really interesting issues. But most of all, it's given me a real sense of how New Zealand is seen in the world, how others perceive us, and what it is that we need to be successful in a very complex world. So I'll very quickly just run through some of the things that I've done since I've been in this career. First of all, my first posting was in Tokyo, where I was covering trade access issues for about 3 years. In that capacity, I was working to remove trade barriers for New Zealand companies in areas ranging from kiwi fruit and beef to education services to bovine semen. Shortly after that, I returned to New Zealand and I spent a few years working on regional diplomacy in a role that took me all over the Asia Pacific, from Vietnam to Australia to Peru. I was then posted to New York for about 5 years, where I played a central role in New Zealand's successful campaign to become a member of the UN Security Council. And when we were elected, I then returned to New Zealand, where I led our policy team that provided the policy framework for our engagement on the Security Council during our membership. I then spent a couple of years working on European issues, and that culminated in me being posted here in Rome. As ambassador here in Rome, I'm responsible for New Zealand's bilateral relationships with Italy, as well as 9 other countries in South and Southeastern Europe. I also am responsible for our engagement with 3 UN agencies, including the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Programme, as well as 1 peacekeeping operation in the Sinai, which has its headquarters here. During my time here, I've been very involved in efforts to lobby for an FTA with the European Union, which, as you know, has just recently been concluded. I've been responsible for reporting on a wide range of issues of importance to New Zealand, from the Byzantine, the nature of Italian politics, through to the early stages of the COVID pandemic here. I've been supporting cooperation, strengthening cooperation in a range of areas, everything from medical research to Antarctic cooperation, as well as representing New Zealand in a range of war commemorations. They're pretty thick on the ground in this part of the world. In the UN agencies, I've been responsible for supporting our response to the global food crisis that's unfolding at the moment, as well as dealing with the intense challenges that came from the COVID pandemic, including helping a significant number of distressed New Zealanders who were caught up in that. As I said, I'm incredibly proud of the job that I do. I really can't imagine a job I would enjoy more than what I'm doing, and I do feel that my time with Kings really helped me prepare for that. It gave me a lot of skills that really have set me on this path. Obviously, academic ability as well as academic curiosity is a really important part of the job that I'm doing. But also the ability to talk to people from a wide range of different backgrounds and with a range of different viewpoints, and an ability to stay grounded, well-rounded, and to not take myself too seriously. Thank you once again for this extraordinary honour. I really don't know that I have done enough to deserve it, but I guess that just means I'm going to have to spend the remaining years of my career finding ways to make sure that I do. I'm incredibly proud of this award and of my association with King's High School. So thank you very much.
That now concludes our assembly. Thank you to all the guests here today and those of you with us via streaming. Looking out to the audience, so many of you have the huge potential and great prospects that these men we've honoured today had at your age. Consider what you want your life to be and where you want it to take you. A strong start at King's can set you up for worthy achievement and a good life well beyond the school gate, an enriching life. Perhaps you too will be honoured here one day as things pan out in future for what you've done and who you've become in the years to come as a Kingsman. School stand. I'll ask you gentlemen to remain standing, please, as our guests depart the stage. And those of you front row and second row, if you could please move as well.